If we say that 50% of Kenyans access healthcare services in private institutions, right? Would you say that then in that case, it defeats the purpose around universal health coverage?
The story under that is that you are likely to end up at a level 2 facility. Your concern now should be whether you will live if you land at a level 2 or level 3, regardless of ownership. That should be where the concern is. And I know that there are people in the industry who wouldn't want me to say that level 2 and level 3 facilities are struggling with, healthcare provision. But I feel that we have a national duty to keep focused on where the majority of Kenyans seek care. But again, the politics around healthcare haven't allowed governors to invest sufficiently in level 2 and level 3 facilities. But if I go to my health center, they tell me SHA is not working. But really, they don't mean SHA is not working. They mean we are not working.
An estimated 1.1 million Kenyans fall into poverty each year. And that's because of healthcare costs. Would SHA shift UHC change that, or is there more? Or perhaps, what's the difference between a pharmacy with a blue cross and a green cross? What about cancer and the rising incidence amongst the youth? Is it just lifestyle changes, or is there more? Women's health, men's health, your children's health, the economy, this and more awaits you on Season 2 of Kenya's favorite health podcast. My name is Dr. Diana Wangari-Gitau, and welcome to Season 2 of the One Health Lens podcast. Hello, welcome to the One Health Lens podcast, where we have conversations around health and related topics, making them simple and easy for you to understand. I'm your host, Dr. Diana Wangari-Gitau. This is Season 2 finale. Today we're having a recap of what was the year 2024 and perhaps an outlook of what we might expect for 2025. What do I mean? What's the state of healthcare in Kenya? In studio with us, we have Dr. Brian Lishanga. He'll be introducing himself and he'll give us a bird's eye view of what he has seen, what he's hearing on the ground, as they call it. Dr. Lishanga, introduce yourself. Why are you even here? Why you?
So thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great to be back on the One Lens podcast. So my name is Dr. Brian Lishanga. I am a family physician, actually, by training, and have the privilege of chairing RUFA. RUFA, now I say that with confidence because I think more people know what RUFA is.
Exactly.
But in full, it is the Rural and Urban Private Hospital Association of Kenya. It is a society, a non-political society of privately owned medical facilities of any size, clinics, hospitals, ambulatory centers, diagnostic centers, as long as they are privately owned. As an association, we came into existence 6 years ago. This would celebrate our 6th birthday in May this year. Yeah. And we were initially just known by the name Rural Private Hospital Association. But over the last 6 years, a lot of things have changed. Part of it is just movement of people, demographics. So, for instance, when we began, I was running a facility in Nakuru, and Nakuru was a town. Now it's a city, apparently. And I saw today that it's surpassed Kiambu to be second largest in GDP in the country. So after Nairobi, it's a difference of about 8 billion shillings, but they are there. Fast growing place. So, so Kenya is also changing.
If we say that 50% of Kenyans access healthcare services in private institutions, right? Would you say that then in that case, it defeats the purpose around universal health coverage? And I know it's a tricky question in itself, because most people would say the nearest facility almost tends to be a public healthcare center or one form of facility in the public space. Is that true, first of all? So if I was to get sick anywhere in Kenya right now, the nearest facility, what are the chances that it would be private versus public?
It's still exactly as I'm saying,
50-50.
50-50. It's a 50-50 chance that it will be. And that also depending with where you are, it changes. You see, the more remote you are, the more likely it will be a public or faith-based. In fact, in some places, the faith-based hospitals are everything, especially in the frontier counties. They run the show a lot. But if you are in Mombasa, for instance, you're very likely it will be a private hospital in Mombasa and in Nairobi. Same thing to Eldoret. So you can see that it does depend, and when you average it out, it ends up being something like 50-50. But the story under that is that you are likely to end up at a level 2 facility. That is the whole likelihood. So if you go deeper, then, okay, so what place will you end up with? It doesn't matter, the private, public. You are likely to end up at a level 2 or a level 3 health facility. So your concern now should be whether you will leave if you land at a level 2 or level 3, regardless of ownership. That should be where the concern is. And I know that there are people in the industry who wouldn't want me to say that level 2 and level 3 facilities are struggling with, healthcare provision. But I feel that we have a national duty to keep focused on where the majority of Kenyans seek care. It is, we don't need anyone to defend Kenyatta National Hospital. It defends itself by just virtue of being. It is so massive that it is its own defense. But a level 2 facility somewhere in Makadara or in Kasarani, who speaks for them? And yet, as you have rightly asked me, that is the most likely place you will land if you fell ill. So we think that there has been lack of focus on those facilities, and our surveys have shown that, including the payment surveys and the SHA transition surveys. They show that level 2 and level 3 facilities, what we call primary health facilities, are falling further and further and further behind.
That's a good point.
They are falling further and further and further and further behind, and the distress at that level is so high. And it doesn't matter whether it's the ownership. On the public sector side, somebody might argue that, county governments have budgets, these guys have FIF. But again, the politics around healthcare haven't allowed governors to invest sufficiently in level 2 and level 3 facilities beyond building structures. So it's great optics to cut a ribbon at a health center in this ward, in that ward, in that ward. I know it makes for great politics, but one of the reasons why our scorecards show that SHA has been unpopular, might be changing now a little bit, but very unpopular the last 3 months, was that if I go to my health center, they tell me SHA is not working. But really, they don't mean SHA is not working. They mean we are not working. We are not working, because so SHA is totally online. How many government health centers, level 2 dispensaries and level 3 health centers, have a stable internet connection? I would love to see that survey. That's one of my disappointments with the last health facility census that was published in September 2023. They didn't ask questions around solarization, around internet connectivity, stability. They didn't go into things like power backup. So we don't know really how many of our health level 2 and level 3s have internet. And how many of them, if a blackout happens, they can work. We also don't know how many of them are 24/7 facilities and who work over the weekend. So, and these are major gaps in the provision of primary health that we don't know. But we see it in our surveys that SHA's unpopularity is largely at the bottom of the pyramid. And for our government, which is the bottom-up government, that is the worst place they can be in, because it flies in the face of everything that is them, that defines them, which is we are for the lower people, we are for the people who, and yet the facilities, healthcare facilities for them are the least invested in. A good example is I see that when our ministry officials want to give a positive story about the transition, they go to referral hospitals. So, which is all fine, but it almost looks very choreographed. So get me a good, a post transplant patient. You can literally.
I'm sure the computer is there.
Yeah, I mean, some of those things, they look very set up. But even if they are not, it is the wrong place for you the wrong barometer for whether the transition is working. And one of the things that our surveys as RUFA has been showing is that the SHIF fund is improving over time. This is the middle fund, the 2.75% fund, the proxy means testing fund. It is improving. And I need to say that very clearly that it is working. So somebody doesn't say, RUFA never says anything is working. No, SHIF is working. It's improving. It's not there yet. It's not perfect, but SHIF is working. But then, because I like to think critically about things, I realize that is exactly the problem, because SHIF is NHIF. There is no way you can tell me SHIF is not NHIF. And NHIF, so it flies in the face of the arguments that we reformed this because NHIF was not working. Because the only thing working is NHIF right now. It's literally NHIF. It is NHIF with more money.
Fab. So you say it's NHIF because of the fact that then the primary healthcare fund and the rest are not working?
No, because of the point I'm trying to make is because of the structure of the reform. There are many new things, like 5 new things. But the main new things here were the primary healthcare fund. That is totally new. You and I will agree that it has never existed since God created the earth in Kenya. So that's a new thing. The ECCIF fund is totally new. We didn't have that. SHIF is not new. SHIF is NHIF. And SHIF is working because NHIF was working. So I take exception to the people who celebrate SHIF working, because they should never say NHIF was not working. They should just say NHIF is still working. It is NHIF with more money because of 2.75%.
Okay, we could go into a rabbit hole there.
And yes, that is why I was saying that the referral hospital story is wrong, because the SHIF fund by law is a referral hospital fund.
Okay. So we should
level 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
That is where the SHIF fund operates. To know, what I'm trying to say is that to know for sure whether the transition has improved the lives of Kenyans, you need to go to the primary healthcare fund and the emergency chronic and critical illnesses fund. Those are the true barometers of the reform.
Okay.
Those are the stuff that are new.
it's a mindset. But to your point, so there are more components to this, because there's also the digital element. A big part of this transition was that we're going to ride on the backbone of new infrastructure, digital infrastructure, technologies, what's going to lead the way, right? No paper-based system. And we saw there were issues, and they're up to as recently as yesterday, we saw that apparently portals were not working. We saw patients are stranded. And most people, or providers, because they have been mandated that if you do not submit your claim through this portal, will not pay you. They have to wait. So essentially, they have to wait. But and maybe let's start looking forward, right? Would you say you're optimistic? And this is your personal opinion. Would you say you're optimistic around just the technology and the infrastructure that's been set up to facilitate the flow of information?
I have listened to conversations around the technology vision, the digital superhighway. And I think that the ideas are, on time. This is when to do them. We will, if we implement it correctly, we will be trailblazing. So the question of, am I optimistic about it?
Sounds like you're hopeful that we'll implement it.
I am guarded optimism, because the one thing that is likely to be done right sooner than anything else. Forget my primary healthcare fund and ECCF, which as much as I would like that to be solved now, I feel like the political interference in those two funds, when we gave Parliament the power to determine the funding there, we basically tied our hands. So I see that resolution around PHC and ECCIF will take much longer. But I feel like the tech issues will be solved sooner. So if I am optimistic that it is going to be one of the wins for the reform, that and you see the people in the tech space are, most of them are younger people. Most of them are doing this because, hey, they are now involved finally in national building, and the ideas matter. So I believe they will deliver, they will execute. So we will have, in the next 2 years, a very interesting digital architecture. My concern about that architecture is going to be back to what I said earlier, that we live in a state where every reform, people ask, how am I benefiting? Anytime a bill goes to Parliament, you can always know what it's about by asking yourself, who will get rich if this bill passes? So, and maybe it's not a Kenyan thing. Maybe it's worldwide that people do that about when they pass legislation. But we have to be careful not to make every reform about a small class of people getting wealthy. I think that innovators should be paid for innovations. For instance, people who do great things. But if the digital reform doesn't work, it's going to be because, in my view, it's going to be because the procurement interests became too strong. That might be the reason why it doesn't work. But if the president and his people, and I would say the president because I think this has to take like the highest executive leadership, if they decide that the good of the Kenyan people around the digital reform supersedes any commercial interests, then that could be a legacy item for him. This one is one of those things. It could be another M-Pesa moment for the country where, people say, you see Kenya, trailblaze on mobile banking. We could be the ones who trailblaze in Africa, at least on large-scale digitization of our healthcare records, and I have seen some of the demos, and I think the ideas are superb. What worries me is that what I've said, the commercial interest, because once we start having Adani type conversations, once you bring in, and people are always ready, waiting, because when people look around, they say, I'm looking for the money trail, and then bam, they find some, bam, and then the political environment becomes so toxic that if you are relying on foreign money, like we saw with the airport things, it goes away. So I would say it is in the interest of the leadership to rein in the commercial interests and make sure that this doesn't become about commerce, it becomes about change.
But
yeah,
what chances do we have, right? And I know it's never a fair question. But I'm going to use you as a proxy and say, you've had this conversations, right?
Yeah.
And you've had responses to the service, because obviously when they started, they didn't necessarily portray a very positive picture, right? So I'd imagine you'd have a lot of engagements with people at high office levels, right? Would you say there's an openness to, say, feedback, right? Would you say there's also the willingness to open up, right? And what do I mean by that? I think we all at this point are saying, this is the journey we're on, this is the train we're on, right? We're not going back. Things need to be tweaked, but it will help us if we're able to know maybe this part is not ready, At this point, the journey is going to take longer. Hold on, all those. And I feel like if there was more visibility moving forward, people perhaps would be not caught off guard. People will not be as emotive as they have been. So in your engagements, in the feedback, in the conversations, do you think there's openness to that feedback? Is there a willingness to also open up what's happening?
It always depends with who you are talking to. People are very different. I have discovered that you cannot paint everyone the same. I would say that, for instance, within SHA, we have officers in SHA who are very receptive to, criticism and feedback. And you can see that they genuinely want to do things differently. For instance, we've as RUFA, we've gotten off to a very good relationship with Robert, the acting CEO. We have had a relationship even when he was director of finance, but we find that it's been easier for us to get feedback to him, to meet with him and his team. Does that necessarily translate into change? I think that then people like him and others who are part of a bureaucracy, so I certainly don't think that, for instance, he has all the power. I have members of RUFA who think that if they just sat down with the CEO of SHA, their issues will be solved. I try to tell them to temper their expectations. Individual people are probably good, but institutionally, they work within environments that may constrain them. And, it's the same thing, I think, with almost many of them, especially our colleagues in that sector, because we have fairly good access to them. We talk to them one-on-one, but I feel like they are constrained within that environment. I would say this, my experience dealing with the state agencies is that I have stopped buying this idea. Let me say it in Swahili. People say, huyu kiongozi ni mzuri, watu wake ndo wabaya. I stopped buying that because it's not true. I have been in meetings where, very powerful government officials are there, and I watch the room, and I see very bright people capitulating to extremely weird, stupid ideas because they are in the presence of power. So somebody who is exceptionally bright, and you wonder how they accepted that to fly. I think power actually overwhelms people.
Okay, then.
So I'm gonna say this about the question as to whether feedback is being received. I think yes, it is, but people in organized structure, power structures, change their their positions or their let me say their position, change their approach. They read the leader's body language.
Okay.
So they do this. They are in the room and change their posture. They watch where the leader, he or she, is going. They watch her or him very closely, and they try and sniff what you like, and then they bend to reflect what they think you are reflecting. So this is why we are headed nowhere when we have poor leadership, because it doesn't matter. You can pack the most brilliant people in an organization. It comes down to the leader's values and the moral compass that they have, because everyone is going to copy them. The leader doesn't need to be brilliant. They just need to have their heart in the right place. Just that.
Fair. So then what chance is there for the common man, right? What chance? And it's, again, all are loaded questions, right? Because we can have this conversation and we could go on. Fundamentally, it boils down to, someone I know will get sick at some point. God forbid it's outside these major facilities, right? You want them to get good quality care, right? You don't want it to be the stumbling block is the fact that they cannot be found in a portal, the portal is not up. You don't want all those things, right?
Technical issues,
you don't want that. And even if we surpass those, we don't want it to be then we are fundraising just to get them into theater, all those things. So as a Kenyan, the only thing I'd want for 2025 is to be able to say, if we're not having visibility of what's happening, or there is no even just, we're not walking this journey together, meaning that if we know we're going to encounter an issue, things are not ready, we're not going to be told. We're just going to happen to discover them, right? If that's not going to be there, because that's beyond our control, right? Essentially, what chance is there? Is it that Kenyans need to come up and say, we are tired, we march on the streets as we have been doing this past 2024? Is it that, my view, providers need to somehow come together? It could be Rufa, I don't know, you can name them, right? As you're saying, CHAC, the Catholic, Kenya Healthcare Federation, all these other ones, all those associations that aggregate beyond even just medical facilities. It could be clinical officers. It could be other cadres in healthcare, right? Somehow we find a way for them, as you said, to say this is what's happening in a unified voice. Or if not a unified voice, at least the visibility is coming from the people on the ground. Because we might not succeed in the bureaucracy that is government, but the people who are experiencing this are able to bring them together to say, this is what's happening, this is what your experience is, this is why in Northern Kenya, Southern Kenya, East or West, this is where the issues are, or this is the positive. Is there a way to bring them together so that you guys advocate for the patients?
I like this question because it's sort of also asking me about my outlook for 2025.
Exactly. As the final point.
Yes, I think that, and I have said this consistently since January,
yes,
that we as a sector, this is a make or break year. Am I optimistic or pessimistic? I am neither. Neither. I'm very flat neutral here. I think that three things need to happen. One, and I have a bias because I speak for providers.
Yes.
And this is advice to the state. One, they must settle historical issues around NHIF. We need to close the NHIF books in an orderly fashion. as a nation, not even as Ministry of Health, as a nation, NHIF was ours since 1966. We have to close that chapter as a country and move on, and we have to do it in an orderly manner. We need to know what happened in NHIF. We need to know what went on. By this I don't mean necessarily a forensic audit, but we need to close the books of NHIF.
So the debts need to be paid.
Yes, the liabilities need to be addressed. They cannot be wished away. They cannot be swept under the carpet. They will haunt these guys, our colleagues, for their whole lives. And I want to tell them this, 20 years from now, if NHIF arrears are not sorted out, you will be blamed 20 years from now, and people will not forget. And they will say you bungled this. So that is one. Two.
And also, I think you say that, or you wrote something like most facilities would end up even shutting down.
They will shut down.
In as much as SHA is paying, if you have bills from NHIF of 100 million, that means that 100 million, you already paid your staff then. You already used that money. So it's money that somewhere you'll need to either...
It's already been spent. And you have to pay whoever gave you to spend it. And that will bring me to my very last point. So that's the first thing, NHIF... We need to close that book since 1966 in an orderly manner as a country, not like, running away from it the way we are trying to do and call it bad and run. No, it was our baby. If it had issues, if our money was used to buy land in Muthaiga, we need to know. It's fine. It's our land. We just know we have it there. It's okay. But we need to...
And all of us need to be given a piece of this land.
We'll be given a piece of our contribution. Kenyans think like that. I've been putting my money there, so they know it is their money. But let's have the courage to close that in an orderly manner, to pay the liabilities and to sort it out. Let's run. That's leadership. It's needed there. Two is, and I alluded to it, this year. So that's the first thing they should do this year. One of the top priorities. The other top priority is that they should call this year the year of primary health. They should not call it any other name. If they sort out primary health, then we have UHC. So they should call this the year of primary health care and do everything in their power to make sure primary health care works, including even re-engineering how county governments handle primary health. I would love to see the national government giving grants to county governments, for example, just to solarize. Just that. I disagree with this idea that you want to put x-rays in level 2s and asking them whether they need MRIs. That's very procurement led, because we know it doesn't do the basic simple things. Give them grants and say this grant is tied to solarization. We want these level 2s to be open over the weekend, and if power goes away, we want... And in fact, it will even reduce your costs. You use solar. We have so much sun. I would like to see a grant for internet. Give them grants to do basic, simple things. But let them call this year the year of primary health and make it... We want to see stars, primary healthcare stars coming out of 2025 who champion the cause from the government side. The third thing is... escalating costs will continue to be an issue if they do not properly fund those two funds, the PHC fund and the ECCIF fund. By the way, anytime you hear of a story that is negative about the transition, it is tied to those two. There is no other negative. It is tied directly to those two funds, because people ending up in ICU and our principal secretary saying we only pay 3,000 a day. That is where Harambes and WhatsApp groups are coming from.
It's an emergency.
Yeah. So that needs to be sorted out. So those three issues: fund the two funds which constitute your reforms. We make them a priority in 2025. We see it in the budget of this year. When the budget is read this year, I'm looking at that. I will be looking at those two funds, and I am hoping they will have substantial money. finally, chaos is a ladder. I need to say that. So, I think that if you are an entrepreneur in healthcare this year, you should remember that statement, that chaos is a ladder. And so chaos will either destroy you or it will make you. I wrote an article on LinkedIn 2 days ago, and it was very provocative. I think I have lost a few friends on that, but they misunderstood me. I said that private sector should quit primary health in Kenya. But if you read the article, that's not what I'm really saying. I'm just saying we should re-engineer. And so we are going to experience chaos this year because we are still in transition. Transition is not over. And people who don't adapt will get out of the industry. And I would rather you get out of the industry on your own terms. If you're getting out, get out on your own terms, with your head held high. But if you don't see this train wreck that is coming, it might crash you. But I also think in the same breath that there are healthcare companies in Kenya today that will do extremely well under this transition. And I'll give you examples. I think that any healthcare company that operates across CAF levels. So this is a business that is invested in the whole ecosystem from level 2 or level 3 to 4 to 5. They have their feet there, and then they also are in different geographies, different primary care networks. This is their time. And I argued this with our colleagues. I told them the biggest beneficiaries of the SHA reforms are going to be hospital networks and bigger hospitals. And I think I still believe that. So, what am I saying? If you're a primary healthcare provider, maybe you need to be thinking of who to synergize with. Okay? Which level 4 or 5 hospitals is your partner or owns a stake in your business, or you own a stake in their business. That's where you need to be thinking. And that is what I meant, that if you are, for example, have a chain of primary healthcare facilities, maybe it is time to open that level 5 hospital so that you play. So chaos is a ladder. So there are people who will rise out of this, but if they don't see the opportunity, they might fall. So for me, that's how 2025 looks like. At the end of this year, this landscape would look very different. I think that we will have fewer facilities, but my hope is that they will be stronger.
And the patients, what happens to them?
For the patients, and that's why I started by saying that they should make this year the year of primary healthcare, because that is what patients need. They need stars in primary healthcare.
We shall be here. Thank you so much for joining the One Health Lens podcast and being with us for the entire season. We'll see you in the next one.